Kip, what's up, man? Great to see you. This is, I believe, yes, this is the first Ask Me Anything of the new year. So hopefully we do a good job. I
Yeah,
was looking at something the other day. I pulled it up on iTunes, and last week we passed 1,000 episodes. So we've done 1,005 episodes as of last week. That is crazy to me.
yeah, that is a lot of talking.
That's a lot of talking, and you guys hopefully aren't too sick of us yet. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm close to 250, I think.
That you've done for the Ask Me
Yeah.
Anything. Isn't that
Yeah.
crazy?
Yeah, it is
I was
crazy.
at a Christmas little get together last week, and one of the men there was asking me a bunch of questions about Order of Man and Iron Council and what we're doing here. And I felt a little bad. I was kind of dismissive. I'd answer
Because
his
you didn't want to talk
questions.
about it.
I just didn't. I didn't feel like
Yeah.
it. I just wanted to be
Yeah.
there and enjoy and play games and have
I
fun and
don't
talk
talk
about
talk
something
work,
else.
business.
Yeah,
Yeah.
talk shop. And then I saw that we had 1,000 episodes, and I thought to myself, well, that's why I talk about this all day, all the time. Sometimes I just don't want to talk about it. Earlier in the year, my son and I went on a moose hunt, and our guide, he's the owner of the camps that we were with and the outfitter, and he was our guide as well. And he was asking me what I did, and I told him I had a podcast, and he didn't really say much or think much of it. And he went back that night, and I guess he's got another young man who listens to a lot of podcasts that works for him,
Yeah.
and was like, "Bro, that is a legitimate podcaster. Like he's."
Yeah. Yeah.
and so Mike came back the next day. He's like, "You didn't tell me how awesome your podcast. Like
You're
what?
legit. I
Yeah,
assumed you're a moron. Yeah.
right." And I said, "Well, I don't know. I just it is what it is, you know." And
Yeah.
and then we spent about 5 days together, just through hunting. And he told me at the end, he's like, it's like pulling teeth trying to get you to talk about what you do for work. I'm like, I
Yeah.
know. I just want to come up here and hunt and talk about something completely different than what I talk about
Totally.
every day.
That's funny. I'm sure you get this scenario. So I reached out to another executive that's over like people and culture, and we're
Uh,
chatting, and he was this guy's a stud, and he was super like, man, I'm like, congratulations on your new position and the success that he's having, because he received some awards around how the kind of work that he's doing. And so I'm like,
okay.
great job, man. And he's like, well, and part of it is I owe it to surrounding myself with people like you and getting feedback and input from people like you. And at first I was kind of like, we don't talk that often, right? Like, you know what I mean? I'm thinking you're too kind, right? Because you're
Yeah.
not getting much input from me. And then in the conversation, he was like, I said something. He's like, oh, like last week's episode when you mentioned this,
Oh,
and I was like, oh, I'm like, that's funny. Like, and I
yeah.
did, I forgot, or I didn't even know that he even knew about the podcast. Does it make sense? And
Yes.
and so he's like, "Oh, I'm getting edified through these conversations that I didn't know we were having," you know?
It makes
And
you
I'm like,
very aware
"Oh,
of what you're saying. And
almost almost like, man, what do I need to be more careful, like sometimes is
yeah.
what I think, but
Well, I had our pastor say one time that he's like, "Oh, I listened to that episode." I'm like, "Yee, I
yeah.
don't know when you listen to all the episode." But the other day, I had a bin of mail that I was shipping out, hats, shirts, that sort of thing from our store,
Yeah.
and I walked to the front door of the post office, and the door opened before I got to it, and it was a UPS driver, and he was standing there in the doorway, but he was on his little handheld machine, so he didn't
Yeah.
notice I was there, and he took an unusual amount of time fiddling around with his machine without seeing that I was there.
Yeah.
And I was like, in my head, I'm like, come on, man, like hurry up. But I didn't say
Scanning already.
anything.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah.
Right. I was very patient and just kind of chuckled. And then he saw me. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I said, no problem. No problem. So he held the door open for me, and I walked in, and he's like, hey, you're Ryan Mickler. And I said, yeah, yeah. He says, oh, I've wanted to meet you. I know you live here. I've delivered to your house before, but I've never had the chance to meet you. And so we talked for a minute. It was really cool. And I thought at the end of it, I thought to myself, I am glad that I was not an asshole to that guy, because I was tempted to be, come on, don't you see I'm standing? Get out of the way. But I was
Yeah,
so glad that I was actually patient that time and that he got the
totally.
better version of me in that
Yeah.
moment. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. Well, and in that spirit, my daughter said, well, dad says something, blah, 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 while I was in the kitchen. This is like a couple weeks ago. And I'm like, I did not say that. She's like, I heard you say that on YouTube. And
Oh yeah.
I'm
She's
like,
using it against you.
dude, I know. I'm like, okay, you know
We
what?
got to get you to stop
Mental
swearing.
note. I
That's
know.
my goal for
I know.
2023 for you. Get you to stop
Done.
swearing.
Done.
All
Just
right.
like that. See how easy that
Okay.
is, guys?
We'll
Done.
see. We'll see. I will be calling you out. All right, let's get
I
to some questions. These guys are
yeah,
sick of hearing from us on this stuff.
for sure. So we're fielding questions from the Foundry. That is our system that we use in the Iron Council. If you were wise enough to sign up, we actually have a number of new members within the Iron Council that actually submitted questions today. So like
Hey,
our
and I don't know if
first
you
few
know this.
questions are new members. Yeah, good.
I decided to keep it open until Friday.
Till Friday. Okay, so it's still open. So
It's
if you
still open.
guys, yeah, if you guys waited until the new year, you got a very short window, literally what, 2 days, 3 days to sign up before this Friday. So to sign up, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. Join us there. You're going to sign up and then you're going to hit the ground running because we've started.
We're going.
So
Started.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
going. So
All
these
right.
first few questions are from new members taking advantage of being members of the Iron Council. Richard Terrace, what is your greatest achievement of 2022 and what goal did you fail to achieve? Last question is better.
Yeah, I don't know that I failed in any of my goals, but my greatest achievement and my biggest failure, I'll say it that way,
Yeah.
are around the same thing. And that is
Ironic.
it's my use of alcohol. It's the alcohol abuse in 2022. Yeah. It got really bad, guys. Like really, really bad. I was in a really dark place. In fact, I did not realize how bad it was until like last week, where I see things so much
You
differently
had
and so
another
much
breakthrough
clearer.
last week of like how bad.
I just see it so differently. I remember things. I remember how I felt. I remember the dark place I was in. Horrible, horrible place. I treated my family horribly. Like it was just bad. And so that was my greatest failure. You know, that I for a guy that talks to other men about becoming their best, being their best version of themselves, how could I how could I fall into that? And I'm not saying how could I because I'm above anybody else, but I just felt so hypocritical about falling into that trap and succumbing to the addiction and the temptation of alcohol. But my greatest victory is over the past, let's see, August, September, October, November, December. Now we're into January. So I'm over 5 months sober now. So I've lost weight, energy levels. I'm seeing things clearer. I definitely way healthier relationships with people around me. That I feel better just talking with you guys. Everything about my life is getting gradually better. And I don't want to dismiss that. There is collateral damage that I have that's that I have to deal with. But I'm on the path and things are improving and we're working towards resolutions with some of these things.
Yeah. Well, geez, anything I say is gonna sound mediocre. It's
No,
funny.
hold on a second. Let me interject on that though, Kip. And I know you're
Yeah,
joking about that, but I actually think
it's a
that a
good
lot
point.
of people might believe that. They might think, well, man, Ryan's going through that. What do I have to complain about? Or I've thought that,
Yeah,
hey, there's these people going through these horrific, horrible situations. And here I am dealing with putting a bottle of booze down. Like, who am I to have that problem when these people have this problem? And
yeah,
that's where we need to avoid comparing ourselves to other people. What you're dealing with is important. It's not something that you should just write off because somebody else has it worse than you. And by the way, acknowledging that you're in a bad situation doesn't dismiss or diminish what somebody else might be going through. And I know you
totally.
were joking in that moment, but I
Yeah,
know
yeah,
a lot of guys are like, well, I shouldn't have a problem with this. Well, you do. You don't acknowledge it, own it, give it
yeah.
some weight so you can actually deal with it accordingly.
Well, and the irony of what you just said is usually they dismiss it and that ends up being a lack of action on their part, so they don't address it, even though it's
Right.
a small thing,
Right.
right? In comparison, perhaps, right? But I've always loved the analogy of like, if it's a problem, if it's real for you, if it's a heartache for you, then it's a heartache, period.
Right. Yeah, we
Like,
get that in the Facebook group occasionally where somebody will post something and a
yeah,
bunch of guys will, henpeck him and they're like, well, that's stupid. It's like, that's an issue that guy's dealing with. Who are you to dismiss that? Who
so
are you
that's
to try to
their,
interject how that person feels about what they're going through? Why don't we just
so
help that person? And then it is no longer an issue for them.
yeah, I totally agree. Achievement wise, it's kind of funny. Like, if I look at my battle plans, I had a lot of achievements, right? And objectives that I felt like I met. There's something that's not on any of my battle plans this year that is probably the greatest achievement. And it's odd. It's just really present on my mind. Is this year I've gotten very clear on, and there's different books and different people call these different things, but like my leadership style, or like really where my strengths are. That has been very apparent to me this past year. More, and almost to the extent that if you asked me certain questions last year, they wouldn't have been on the list. And it's very present on my mind. I'm like, whoa. And then of course, following up to that is now my ability to take advantage of those talents given to me, or those strengths that I have, and what am I going to do with them. Failure wise, that probably, and it's not even a failure, but probably the biggest failure that I had this year is is that house that we're building at the lake, right?
Uh-huh.
We're burning, we're building it with cash, right? And so my biggest failure is my savings. Like, I look at my savings and I'm like, oh man, like it felt so nice, you know what I mean, to have like a decent savings, and now it's the
But
structure
would you
somewhere.
consider
So
that a failure? Because you made a decision, a conscious decision.
yeah, it's not a failure. It's not a failure. Okay, that's a weak failure. I don't know. I don't have like there's not a major thing this year that I felt like I failed to achieve. I felt great about the year, right? We had some huge success. I do. How's this? A failure of mine. I still get triggered over things easily.
Hmm.
I'm not over that yet. Things disrupt me. My default opinion is to stonewall and go quiet and not talk about it, and that's still a really bad habit of mine. And
What have you done to address that?
it goes in segments, right? So like, to be fully transparent, Asia and I were just talking about this the other day, and I was like, here I am recommitting, right? All right, I'm going to recommit, right? If I'm upset about something, I'm going to communicate it so we can talk about it, so it's on the table, and we can address it. And I've done that multiple times, but I'm not consistent with it, right? Like, I'll be like great at communicating, and then like 6 months, all of a sudden I'm upset and I'm not communicating anymore.
Right.
And I think at the root of it, really at the root of it is, it's really a form of manipulation, to be honest. It
Of
is,
course.
I'm trying to control her reactions.
You're trying to elicit a response.
Yeah. And I don't want her to maybe get upset, or I want her to make a change without getting upset. And by communicating it, it might create a big disruption. And I need to really have that mentality, Ryan. And I think you're good at this. I sense this anyway, but being good with my response and my communication. And if you choose to overreact, that's on you. That's not on me. But I almost put that on me. Like, oh, if I talk to Ryan and he responds incorrectly, like, you know what I mean, then I'm not going to talk to him about it, or I'm not going to whatever, versus giving you that agency to choose how you might. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not throwing out like tactics and communicating effectively or whatever, but I'm trying to manipulate and control the situation and how you're going to react, versus doing it correctly in my mind, feeling good about my communication, and then letting you decide how you're going to react and being okay with whatever reaction you have. And that's a struggle of mine.
I appreciate it. I'm not good at that either. You say I'm good at it. But there's a couple of attachment styles. I think we've kind of hit on this in the past several months, where you have more of an avoidance attachment style.
Yeah,
So
for
when
sure.
things aren't working, it's distance, avoid. I have, now I drew a blank. Assertive or aggressive. I can't remember. What is it called? Attach. I can't even think of what it is now. I'm drawing a blank, but I will run into it. Right.
Yeah. You try
So
to change it.
anxious
Yeah.
attachment. So I have
Yeah.
an anxious attachment style, whereas, okay, there's an issue. I'm anxious about it. I want to go attack it. But the
But
result
that's what
or
I
the,
mean. You communicate it where I don't, right? So
yeah, but
there's some
still
value to that, but
there's also value to disengage too.
yeah.
Right. It's not about which one is right or wrong. It's about using the appropriate action in the right moment. The problem with an anxious attachment style like I have is I'm trying to manipulate too, just like
Yeah.
you're trying to manipulate.
You're
I'm just
bulldozing
trying.
instead. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
both of us are trying to manipulate in different ways. I asked you that question because I wonder, and I've really tried to work on this myself over the past several months, is if you've gotten to the work of figuring out why those things trigger you so that you don't even get triggered in the first place.
Yeah. I'm aware of those triggers where I fail. To be frank, when I pause, and that isn't that ironic that is like the very solution for me, at least, is to actually pause. My empathy and understanding is great if I literally just sit with it
Mm-hmm.
and go, wait, is because that's the difference, right? Is that truth? Whatever triggered me, is that true? And the reality of it, in most cases, it's not true. It's my interpretation. Asia does X. I make it mean this. You know what I mean? And then I get derailed. And I don't know. And it's ironic. Someone said this on Friday, and I probably like skimmed through it way too fast on our Iron Council call, but there is a distinction that I've learned over the years, that there's always a way. There's always, and the way it was explained to me is, you're already always listening. There's a paradigm by which you see the world consistently all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And this brother on this call, I thought it was profound because I felt this way so many times. He said something to the extent of, it feels good to have something go wrong.
Yeah.
Like, it feels good. And I felt that way. In fact, there's been evidence in my life where I found out a girl I was dating was cheating on me, and it felt good. There's some satisfaction I got from it. And what was the satisfaction? The satisfaction is I was right. I was right about me. I was right that I wasn't good enough. I was right. It's this validation that I'm freaking right about a horrible paradigm that I have about myself. Are you joking? That is so horrible. Right. And that's my default of that paradigm by which I see the world. So when Asia does X that triggers me, there's some payoff.
You're like, see, I
knew it. I knew it. And so I want to hold on to the payoff I'm getting.
Yeah.
Because it validates how I feel, instead of pausing it and fighting against that and going, no, that's not true. That's unfair to her. You know what I mean? And then and in essence, and it sounds extreme to some people, and restore my integrity. Because why am I out of integrity? Because I'm the one withholding love and affection based upon a pretense of something that's not even true.
Right.
So in most cases, when I'm upset, it's me that should be correcting and restoring my integrity and asking for an apology. And this is where mostly everyone gets this wrong, right? We have these broken relationships with parents, and everyone goes, oh, I need to talk to my dad, and restore my relationship. And I want to dump on him all the things we've done wrong. You want to be empowered? You need to go to your father that treated you poorly, and you need to ask for forgiveness. That's how you get complete with someone. Not changing them, getting correct with yourself,
Yeah.
So,
well, even that asking for an apology or asking for forgiveness can be a form of manipulation.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
You're going to start behaving a certain. I had a really interesting.
Well, it comes with a covert contract.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
I had an interesting conversation with my wife over the weekend, and when you talked about being right, something going wrong, and then you being right, so it validates the fact that you were concerned about it. I try to make others right according to my definition of right.
Yeah.
So my wife and I were talking about something this weekend, and she was telling me how she felt about it. And normally I would say, hey, you don't need to feel that way because of dot, 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 dot. Like,
Yeah.
you don't need to feel like
Invalid.
that's not what I was trying to do, or that's not what I was trying to communicate. And so
Yeah.
what I'm doing is I'm trying to make it so she doesn't feel that way.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, it clicked on me this weekend when we were having that conversation. And I told her, I said, I hear that. You know, okay. Thanks. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah.
And I didn't say anything else. It was just thank you for telling. I'm sorry you feel that way. But I really appreciate you telling me. Thank you for telling me how that feels.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was amazing.
Yeah. And amazing for her, right? Like, how many
Hopefully.
times have you communicated to someone and they're like, nah, that's not true. And you're like,
Yeah.
you're invalidating, like, this isn't truth. I'm telling you, this is how I feel. Whether it's true, whether it's wrong, whether it's right, it doesn't matter.
Right.
This is my interpretation of the situation. So,
Right.
that's it. And oh no, that's not true. You shouldn't feel, it's like, man, like, it's not
I
even,
think
you don't even feel hurt in those scenarios.
I think that comes from the work that I've been doing over the past several months. I've talked extensively about it with journaling. When it comes to being emotionally triggered about things, for example, getting it off my chest just in the written form and out of my
Has really
mind.
helped.
Oh, completely. Because if
Mm.
somebody does something, my wife does or says something that I don't like, or my kids or you or anybody, I can feel myself, okay, I'm getting emotionally triggered. And then I don't respond to it right away. That evening or that afternoon, I'll get out the journal and I'll write, like, this is what's bothering me today. Okay. And then you look at it objectively, you're like, that's a strange thing to be upset about. Why am I upset about
Yeah.
that? And then you start
Yeah.
writing why you're upset. Well, this one time, this one person did this one thing to me. Oh my gosh. So I'm mad at Kip because he didn't show up exactly on time for our recording. And it's because I feel disrespected because one time 30 years ago, somebody I thought was a friend did the same thing. And then we lost our friendship.
And you're
Like,
projecting it on me. Yeah.
I mean,
That's the truth.
that's a huge leap to make, but it's there. I'm telling you, it is
Totally.
there. And if you can get that out of your mind and onto paper and start to process why you're feeling the way you feel, then the next time it happens, it's not emotionally, you already did the emotional work on it. You've already
Yeah.
gone through the process. So in this case, I would say, hey, Kip, not mad or anything. I just need to make sure we start on time because you're busy. I'm busy. Let's just respect each other's time. End of
Yeah. And
story.
worst case, like, I think, well, let me ask you this. Is it bad even to communicate the trigger, right? Like, say, hey, just so you know, like, this is one of the areas that kind of gets me riled up. It's not justified. It's, kind of a story of mine or whatever. And then give me the chance to go, oh, that's really good to know. Right. I will make
I
a
think depending
conscious
on the
effort just to make
relationship,
sure. Yeah.
I mean, I may not do that in a employer employee context, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Hey, I need you to be on time. I don't need to explain why
Yeah.
that triggers me. You need to be on time, because then I might actually be giving you some justification for not upholding your end of
Yeah.
the deal.
Yeah.
But I
For
think,
just not holding me accountable or whatever.
right. But I
Yeah.
think for your wife, yeah, I think that would be a good thing to explain to her. Like, hey,
Yeah.
hon, when you do this, I feel this way and I'm working on it personally, not taking such offense to it. But I just want to let you know it makes me feel bad because of this. I think
Totally.
that's completely appropriate.
Totally. Let me ask you this, Ryan. Last question. Last question around a question that has nothing to do with the original
With the
question.
original question.
So,
Yeah.
um, those triggers, when you look back and you're documenting, like, kind of like, hey, this really bothers me, and you're kind of finding its original source, if you want to use that term. This has been explained to me as kind of your defining moments. And usually those defining moments are as clear as day. And this was true for me, where I could actually look past my life, and there were scenarios by which I saw the world one way. And after that event that I remember like it was yesterday, my perspective of the world changed, or the perspective of self changed. And there's usually roughly about 5 of them. Is that true for you? Like, when you're going back, that these are defining moments for you, like you can remember them like they're yesterday,
Yeah, I have those
or no?
moments. One was where when
Okay.
my dad died. That was a
Mm.
defining moment for me because I took him off the pedestal I had put him on, and I realized that he was human he was not superhuman.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of myself in that moment, a lot of him in myself, I should say.
Yeah.
And so I realized that I was mistreating him because I had put him on a pedestal, and then I was holding him to an impossible standard.
Yeah. You had un, uh,
Impossible.
uh, these expectations on him that were
Yeah.
unfair.
And that was a mistreatment of him on my part. And
Yeah.
I wonder, he's gone now, but I wonder if I would have taken him off that pedestal a little earlier, if we would have had a better relationship, because I didn't place those faulty, unrealistic expectations on him. And there's
Yeah.
other moments, but that's one that comes to mind.
Totally. Totally. All right. Adam Lewis, opening up some jiu-jitsu talk. As a martial artist, perfection is unattainable. Yes or no? What are your guys' thoughts?
No, I don't even, what is perfection? Does that even exist? Because
Anywhere.
everything can get anywhere, because anything can get better. And then you add an element of unpredictability where you're fighting against an opponent. How do I know? I don't know what you're going to do. I might, based on my knowledge of the martial art, based on my past history of training with you, I might have a pretty good idea of what you're going for, but there's so much unpredictability that I cannot perfect because it's contingent upon external circumstances. So no, perfection is not possible. And, I don't even like the idea of striving for perfection. People say that, well, it's not possible, but strive for it. That doesn't gel in my mind. On one hand, I know it's not possible, but on the other, I'm supposed to strive for something that's not possible. That doesn't compute for me. So I don't care. You can look at it as semantics, figure out however you want to frame it in your mind. But in my mind, I strive for mastery. And to me, mastery is you're on the path, you're actively doing it, you're looking at things that other novices wouldn't necessarily look at. I was thinking about this. My daughter was watching a dance show the other day, and I got caught watching it. And I'm sitting there watching the show, and the lead role, she's this incredible dancer. And I'm watching her dance, and I was thinking, what separates her from somebody who's a good dancer? Not a great dancer, but a good dancer. Well, it's her toes. It's the way she holds her head. It's her fingers in the right position. It's her facial expressions. It's that extra little thing that maybe you just can't quite put your finger on. That's mastery. Have you ever rolled jujitsu with somebody who is so effortless and seamless, and it seems so easy and almost artistic and beautiful that you're like, whoa, this is awesome. This guy is a master. It isn't forceful. It isn't clunky. It's just fluid and masterful. That's what I strive for anyways.
Totally. Well, I mean, it's like, I've shared this before. When I started training in the first couple years, it was about belts, right? I was like, okay, I'm here to, there's a goal associated to training, and the goal was to eventually get a black belt. By the time I got there, the goal had changed. Mm-hmm. It was no longer about the belt. It was about going to the gym and training and learning and creating and the emotional benefits of it. That's it. The goal was no longer a destination. It was actually a state of being. And that's not going to change until I die. So, and I think isn't that life? It's a game. We're playing a game, call it a game if you'd want. And the game's not over until you're dead. So there is no end game, right? The end game is to be determined.
Right.
And it's about growth and learning and everything else. And what's also fun about this idea, I did a lesson at church yesterday, and you'll find this kind of fun because you can imagine me teaching this subject in gospel doctrine. So the lesson was on learning, how to own your learning, your spiritual journey. And in this space of industry, there's levels of learning. Universities and schools are usually like the lowest two levels of learning. And at the top of that pyramid of learning is creation.
Mm.
That is the highest level of learning. And so you want to know if you're starting to get in the space of mastery. It's when you're creating things. Ideas are forming. That's the ultimate form of creation, or the ultimate level of learning and mastery. And not to get religious, but isn't that ironic? But the top level of learning is also the most godly thing that we will all do. And that is to create.
To create. That's
Yeah.
interesting. As you were saying that, I was reminded of jujitsu last week, and I've really tried to be conscious of not falling into my game, quote unquote, my game.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
smash and pressure, right?
Yeah. Which may be a paradigm that you've put on yourself that maybe it's not your game, right?
Maybe. I mean, I like
maybe
it. I enjoy that element of it, but I was I had seen some like berimbolo stuff, and I was like, well, let me try this, And so I hooked my leg in a figure four, and I tried it to go for the back, and the guy ended up on my back, I think, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So
There's
it
a
totally did
moment
not
where it's
work.
available for both. Yeah.
Yeah, it totally did not work. And we both chuckled, which is kind of weird because he's on your back and he's laughing like in your ear. It's really weird. And so he just kind of stopped and reset, but it was kind of cool too, because I don't know how to do it, but I'm confident enough in jujitsu that I'm like, well, this is a good moment to try it. Yeah. And that's a really cool place to be, where you can be creative. You can be a little bit more lighthearted about it. I think a lot of guys come into jujitsu and they're like, I gotta crush and kill and destroy.
Yeah.
And I'm realizing now that I actually like just to be kind of lighthearted about it. Like if you're on somebody's back, just whisper in their ear, just something kind of creepy, or
totally.
just try different things that don't work or do work. Just be fun with it. And that's where I'm at right now, which I enjoy.
Yeah.
The last thing I was going to say on this, Kip, is that you're talking about perfection. Perfection is really subjective. If I were to say, what is the perfect car? I'd get 1,000 different answers. What is the perfect woman? I'd get 1,000 different answers. What is the perfect book? 1,000 different answers. It's all subjective, which means that it doesn't really exist objectively.
Yeah. And changes for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
What the perfect life for Ryan was 10 years ago is not what he thinks the perfect life is right now.
Yeah. For sure.
It's changing for all of us.
Yeah. Cool.
Andy Collins, 2022 was a rough year financially. Had nearly, I'm counting the numbers here, 20,000 in house and car repairs and medical bills. I'm trying to regain control over finances, and I'm starting Financial Peace University and using other tactics to get my finances under control and rebuild my emergency fund. What advice would you give?
I would say do that. I think what might happen here is you can get inundated with so much advice that you don't do any of it, or you do it all. Yeah. It's kind of like taking a shotgun and shooting a deer with it. It's possible. You got to use a certain kind of round, but if you're using some sort of bird shot, it's going to be pretty difficult to take down a deer like that. But if you put a 308 through a deer's lungs, pretty effective, right? And I think you might be running into the same situation here. If you do 17,000 different things to get your finances in order, you're going to be really ineffective with those 17,000 things. But if you go through Financial Peace University, and if I remember correctly, step one is to save $1,000, and you are hyper focused on saving 1,000. That's it. That's all you're doing. That's all you're worried about. Trust me, you're going to save $1,000. If next you start paying off debt, with the exception of the mortgage, I believe. I can't totally remember.
This is Dave Ramsey.
Yeah. And what he says with the debt snowball is to take the debt that you can pay off the fastest. So you take all of your discretionary spending and you just hammer it all in one place towards one debt, the one you can pay off the fastest. And then what do you do next? You move to the next fastest debt, next step. Okay. And so on. So I don't need to go through all the steps. The moral of the story is you're going to be hyper focused on one step at a time. And you're only thinking about the next step once you complete the first step. So
Totally.
you don't need more information. You've got it all. Sometimes that doesn't sit well because as men, we're like, I got to fix it. There's more I can do. There's more I
It's
can
got to
learn.
be the best way. Yeah.
And there is things that you can learn. And I would suggest that you start studying on stocks and the market and real estate and learning about paying off debt and the psychology of money. There's a lot of stuff that you can read up on and learn about while you're actively and aggressively pursuing whatever that step is in front of you. That's what I would say to you. There's nothing else I would add that you're not already doing. Just focus on that one and be content with doing that. It'll work if you do it.
I want to draw a correlation to maybe fitness as just an analogy so we can all benefit from this. Yeah, this is the equivalent of the guy that is out of shape and he's coming in the new year and he's like, all right, here's my plan. I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. I got this workout regimen I'm following. Here's the strict diet I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like there's all these things. And it's like, or you could just make sure not to drink soda.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And your success of just not drinking soda and juices for the next 3 months would be substantial.
Yeah.
And sometimes we look at that low hanging fruit and you're like, that's not enough. And then they take on too much. And then 2-3 weeks in, they fell, and they didn't make any progress, which I don't mind because I hate going to the gym with all you New Year's resolution people because the gym's a shit. I swore. The gym's a mess.
I thought you were done. I thought you were done.
I'm done now.
That's what you said 20 minutes ago. Are you done or are you not done?
Okay. The gym's a mess, so I kind of like everyone falling off of their New Year's resolution because I'm like, I want all these people out of here that aren't like full-time committed,
So selfish, man.
I know.
So selfish.
It is totally selfish.
One thing I would say, and I heard this quote a long time ago and it's really stuck with me, is that action does not equal prudence. Action doesn't equal prudence, but we as men think it does. We're going to go in and I'm going to hammer that nail until it's exactly where I need it to be. Well, you know what? Maybe that nail doesn't need to be hammered right now. We mistake action with prudence. We think if we cut out all the processed sugars and go to the gym and do this and do that and do this and do that, ad nauseum, that things will get better. Not always. If you're doing the wrong action at the wrong time in the wrong order, it actually could compound the problem and make it worse. So let's not mistake action for prudence. Let's take the right actions to the right degree in the right timing and trust that the process will work.
Andy Garrison, what do you think most men should be paying attention to or thinking about in 2023, but probably aren't?
Your emotions, 100%. 100%. This is something that guys are not dealing with. Yeah. And they're led to believe, either they're told directly or indirectly, but they're led to believe that I shouldn't be emotional. I shouldn't show my emotions. I shouldn't let my emotions get the better of me. All these little things that we say. And so we push them down and we subdue them and we hide them and they come out at the worst possible moment in the worst possible ways. And then you might fall into some other behavioral issues. For example, alcoholism. I'm pointing to myself on this one because you never actually addressed your emotions. You never addressed the real problems. And so you can't deal with it. Like I couldn't deal with it. I didn't know how to deal with it. And so rather than dealing with it, I hid it and I sedated it and I medicated over the top of it. And it creates some real problems. So yeah, emotions. Part of that is journaling. Part of that is just just accepting that you're emotional. And it's not unmanly. Just I'm emotional. I'm a human being. I get sad. I get hurt. I'm happy. I'm resentful. I'm bitter. Like I have this wide range of emotions. I have it all. And so why? What am I trying to learn from it? What do I need to experience? What do I need to fix in my life? It's the emotional work. 100%.
I like it. Stephen Gresham, a huge goal for me is to get comfortable with saying no so I can work on my stuff. But I really come alive when I'm around people I'm close with. Any advice on when to say no versus when to enjoy the moment with loved ones Thanks, guys. I'm loving the icy already. I like this question a lot, actually.
I do too. I have to go back though, before we get to that one, I have to go
Yeah,
back
yeah.
to
Sorry.
the emotional thing.
Yeah.
Because I wrote something down as I finished. I heard this phrase from on the Granger Smith podcast this morning. He was talking with his friend and he was talking about keystone habits, habits that if you get right, it trickles down and impacts every aspect of your life.
Got it.
And
Yeah.
it was very interesting to me because doing emotional work is a keystone practice. So if you're thinking to yourself, well, I want a better relationship with my wife, do emotional work. I want a better relationship with my kids. Emotional work will help with that. I want to get fit. I want to be strong. I want to be healthy. Emotional work will help with that. I want to make more money and be better for my clients and add more value to my community or my clients. Yep. Emotional work will help with that. So
Yeah.
it's a keystone practice. All right. So how do you say no, even though he likes to be around his family and gets energized from that? Any tips for saying no because he's becoming overwhelmed, it sounds like.
Yeah. Or maybe he's not executing on something that he wants to work on because people want to hang out with him and his loved ones want to be around him, and saying no, and that kind of that choice between the two.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing you need to do is really just decide for yourself how much time you're willing to put into each one of those areas. And don't make it contingent upon what they might or might not think. Like, hey,
Mm.
I'd like to spend time with family on the weekends, and I'm just not going to do the weekdays because I have my own family. And then on Tuesday and Thursday nights, I have this and this and this. But come up with whatever that schedule looks like. If you haven't done that, how are you going to know how much time to allocate towards certain aspects of your life?
Yeah.
Once you have that established and you feel good about what that schedule looks like, now you're going to go communicate that to the people who will be impacted by it. So that might be your family. I don't know if you're married or if you have kids. If you do, obviously you're going to want to communicate it with them, but you're not communicating it, at least at this point, as a hard set in stone. You're communicating it and you're trying to get some feedback from them, because I know the women that I've heard from, and even my wife, when I say, hey, I'm going to go to train jujitsu on Wednesday nights, she's like, oh, that's good. That works perfect. Or she might say, no, Wednesday night doesn't work. You need to do Tuesday night. Well, Tuesday's fine. It's the same thing for me. So that's fine.
Yeah.
But she's never not said, oh, no, I don't want you taking care of yourself. I said she's never not. She's never said, I don't want to take care of yourself. Right. She's never, in fact, if I miss or I allude to the fact that I might be missing, she'll say, no, you should go.
You should probably go. Yeah.
She wants me to go do those things. And the people in your life want you to take care of yourself. So come up with a schedule, communicate it, and work that plan a little bit, because it might need some massaging based on who's going to be impacted. Maybe the kids need to go here, the kids need to go there. Your wife has this appointment at this time. So the communication. And then from there, this is the hardest part for somebody who doesn't know how to say no. Now you actually have to uphold the boundary. You've created it, you've communicated it, and now you have to uphold it. And the way that you do that is, Kip, if you asked me to do something on Wednesday night, I would say, Kip, Wednesday night is jujitsu for me. It's just a stand-in meeting. It's always that. If you want to spend some time together, they'd love to have you at jujitsu with me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but we got this thing and we're doing this. Hey, I appreciate it. I'm going to miss this one. And I don't say I'm sorry, because I'm not. Hey, I'm sorry. You will never hear me say, unless I slip, you will never hear me say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't make it. That isn't in my vocabulary, because I'm not sorry and I can make it. So now I'm a liar.
You're choosing to.
I'm choosing. So I would tell you, Kip, hey, thank you for the offer, but Wednesday night is for jujitsu. Come with us. Come with me. Train with me. No, I can't make it. That's okay. We'll sync up another night. Yeah. I don't apologize and I don't say I can't make it. I say I made this choice. And that's hard. What I would say for somebody who can't say no is work on saying no in easier environments. So if you're at the mall, at a store in the mall, and they say, would you like to round up for charity? Say no. No excuses. Don't hem-haw around it. Don't beat around the bush. Just no. No, thank you. If you want to be polite. No, thank you. There's two practices. You ask for things that you're uncomfortable asking for, and you say no in environments that you just don't like saying no, but they're low risk environments. And you just get good at realizing that, hey, people got to deal with learning for me to say no. My kids quite often in the morning will say, Dad, can you do this thing with me? No, I can do that with you tonight, but I can't do it with you. No, sorry, I can't say can't. I am working right now, but I will do it with you tonight. And then what do I have to do? You actually have to do it with them.
Yeah.
But that's how I'd suggest getting through it.
Some good stuff. Rick Donovan, what do you plan to do to make the IC better in 2023? What will the new and improved version look like? Not that it's bad, but if you are not moving forward, we're falling behind.
My question is, what is Rick going to do to make the Iron Council a better experience? What are you going to do? See, I've brought you guys all here. Now, what are you going to do to make it a better experience? I'm half joking, but also as a battle team leader
statement,
I would love for you to have some ideas and share and give. And you do, Rick. I'm not saying you don't. One thing that I am very interested in, and we're beginning, is to make courses available. So these will be one-off courses. They might be 2 to 4 to 6 week courses. We're working on one right now with former guest Sathya Sam on overcoming pornography addiction. So he's put together 4 to 6 videos with a worksheet and a curriculum behind it. And we're going to make that available in the Iron Council. And it's going to be included in your Iron Council membership. And for those of you who may not be interested in joining the entirety of the Iron Council, you will be able to get access to that one specific course and just work on that alone. So whether it's a leadership development course that Kip, you and I have been working on, or breaking free from pornography course that we're putting together, very, very excited about implementing these things. And what I would like to do is create some sort of a master class type curriculum or instructions for guys who are qualified to be able to put together their own course that they can make available in the Iron Council for the rest of the guys.
That's awesome. All right, Rob Thompson. I have always been a creative man rather than a proactive man, a reactive creative. Geez, I've always been a reactive man rather than a proactive man. This is something that I hope to fine tune this year, being in the Iron Council. Looking back at 2022, were there any moments that you were reactive to that you wish you were proactive to? And what were the lessons you've learned from it? On a different note, thank you for all you do. Very grateful to be here.
Yeah,
so
I'm beating the alcoholism conversation to death on this one, but it's really important. And I've got hundreds, if not thousands, of messages from guys. In fact, I had a couple this morning that said, I never would have expected that. I didn't imagine that was the case, but I'm so glad. I have a lot of respect for you sharing that. Yeah, that was one I wish I would have been a lot more proactive with. And there were times where I wanted to stop and I wanted to get help and I wanted to turn it around, and I would just chicken out or wimp out or whatever it was, excuse myself out of it, tell myself it wasn't that bad. I'm a high functioning alcoholic. I wish I would have been a lot more proactive with that. Instead, I reacted, and I'm glad I did that at a minimum. The alternative is to do nothing. I could have just continued the course of action. So I'm glad I at least reacted. But yeah, that's one I wish I would have been a lot more proactive with. What are the lessons I learned? I mean, just the way I feel about myself, the guilt that I have for letting guys who listen to the podcast down, the guilt and shame I have around the way that I've treated my wife and kids. Like I could have avoided all of this if I would have just been more proactive in dealing with it when I knew it was a problem.
Yeah. When I look back the past year, I'd say I have in my relationship with my wife, I'm very reactive to what is needed. And I put stuff off on her way too much. She has to harass me to get things done. I may not be in the know. I'm not being proactive in regards to like, hey, how's that going? What can I do? Like, I'm not owning it. I'm not presiding in many areas when it comes back to our family and our household. And the lesson there is that doesn't feel like I care. I'm not supportive. I'm like, I have to be nagged. I'm out of it, probably from her perspective. I'm out of integrity, unreliable when I'm that way. And it doesn't feel supportive.
Yeah.
I'm not being a partner in a lot of things because I've made this excuse that like, oh, well, I got my stuff and I'm stressed out with work and I can't take on anymore. And, and you handle that stuff, I'll handle this stuff, but it's not true. When I really think about it, I could really latch on, lead, preside, and proactively help in those areas way better than I do. And I think in turn it would solidify us working together as a partnership and me showing up more powerfully in our relationship and being a reliable source, right? And it's interesting because I feel I'm totally sharing, maybe, I don't know, I don't think it's bad to share this, but we've had a conversation over the last couple of weeks where my wife brought something up about providing, right, financially, and about and I took her complaint as you don't trust me. Like, I kill it in this space, right, of my life. And I've given you zero reason not to trust me to deliver. And my conclusion to that was like, because from an extreme ownership perspective, I should own that, right? It's like, hey, well, how am I showing up? In what ways have I perhaps maybe even created a reason for her not to trust in me? And maybe it's not necessarily a one-to-one to like providing financially, but what it is though, is all these other things that she has to nag me about. And that's unreliable. Inconsistency is inconsistency. It doesn't matter, right? This was a breakthrough this year that I got. I've always heard that be consistent with your kids, right? It creates stability and it creates, what's the word I'm looking for? It creates the known. They know what to expect.
Predictability.
Yeah, it's predictable and that feels safe for a child. And this isn't a kipism. This is legit. Lack of consistency with your children will create a sense of fear and instability for them. There's emotional drawback to some extent to lack of being consistent, but it's consistent with everything. So when Ryan goes, hey, son, if you don't get off the video game, you're going to be grounded from it for a week or whatever. And he doesn't ground his son, he's inconsistent. Yeah. But it's funny. We always think, oh, consistent about the good stuff. No, it's consistent, period. And that lack of consistency in one spectrum of how I show up affects other spectrums. So if I'm inconsistent with doing what I'd say around the house, it doesn't matter. I'm now, my trust has been taken away. And now it's carried over into financial, providing financially in other areas, because it's my character is what's at question, not right. These isolated buckets of consistency.
Yeah.
And so,
good point. Speaking of consistency, I told my wife I would be downstairs at noon so we could have lunch together. So let's take one more question, a rapid fire question, so I can be true to my word.
I love it, man. Brandon Morsi, with any business, there are challenges, opportunities that can either take you closer or further from your goals. As the order of man in the IC has grown, has it become what you originally envisioned, or has that vision evolved into a brotherhood we know today? If so, what has that vision changed?
Yeah, I did not expect this. I didn't actually have a vision. I just wanted to talk with people that I enjoyed talking with. And if people wanted to listen and tune in, then that was great. Right. Yeah. And that was great. And that was enough when I started. And then I realized, wow, this could be very impactful for a lot of guys because they don't have anywhere else to turn to have these real conversations. They're not going to do it with their neighbor, their colleagues, their coworkers, their friends, not even their family members in some cases. So what a powerful place that we have. And then we started implementing different solutions, like their first iteration of the Iron Council, which had 12 guys in it. The men that were in the Iron Council said, what do we do next? What do we do next? I didn't know. So we opened it up in more of a broader, more complete version of what the Iron Council looks like. And then it was, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we took this from the digital space and did this in person? That's where our events came in line. So I'm kind of even now flying by the seat of my pants. I can see things a little bit further ahead, not all the way ahead, just a little bit further ahead. And oh, we need to address that. Let's tackle that. Okay, we got it tackled. Now the next thing, now the next thing, now the next thing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Can
I
I
didn't expect it to be this.
can I suggest something though? Because I think guys may hear what you say, Ryan, and think that there's different versions of vision. And there is no doubt in my mind that you're very clear and have a vision in regards to what is the Order of Man Iron Council, in regards to its purpose and mission.
True. Yes.
And that is super clear to you, right? Like I think that's solid. Now, how we get there
Yeah, good point.
and the path to take is where you're very flexible, right? And you're agile in that approach.
Yeah, I would kind of, if I was going to use an analogy, think about it like a football field. Well, there's the end zone. So I need to get to the end zone. And here's what the defense is good at. Here's what we as an offense are good at. Let's try a dive up the middle. That's not working because they've got the best, nose tackle in the game. All right, maybe we need to do a sweep to the right. So we do that. Okay, that
Let's
got us
try
a
that.
few yards. Let's dump a pass in there. Let's see what a little pass does. Well, now let's throw a streak. And all of a sudden, you're there. So
Yeah, but you're
end
clear on
zone is
the
the
end
goal.
zone. You're just not clear on the play, and you
Right.
may adjust based upon how defense sets up.
100% I will adjust. Calling audibles, thinking about what the market's going to dictate. Yeah, absolutely. Well, one thing that we've done is this was dictated by the market. And when I say the market, I'm talking about the micro market of the Iron Council. Is there was a lot of guys for a while there leaving because of financial issues. And I hated that. There's a lot of legitimate reasons to leave the Iron Council. I do not want financial constraints to be one of them because I know what the goal is.
Right.
So we decided, this was years ago, that we would start a financial assistance fund. And we have guys who are in the Iron Council paying for other members in 30-day blocks at a time who would otherwise have left the Iron Council because of financial constraints. The market dictated that we needed to figure out a way to keep these guys involved, but I wasn't willing to give it away for free. There has to be skin in the game. So I thought, well, somebody else could pay their debt.
Let these guys
right?
serve each other too.
And that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Now, I want to be very clear on this too, though. If you're listening and you'd like to join the Iron Council, the financial assistance fund is not available to you. I don't know if you're in it. I don't know if you're willing to invest in yourself or to make some sacrifices in your personal life to be part of this group. And if you can't or you don't want to, that's okay. No hard feelings, no ill will. We're going to still put out great content that's available to you. But if you want to do something above and beyond, you got to put some skin in the game. And if down the road, after proving to us and the other guys in the Iron Council that you're willing to be in it, not just financially, then we can talk about the financial assistance fund. So don't send me a bunch of emails and say, hey, I'd like to get in it. Can I use the fund? No, that's not what it's for.
Yeah. All right, let's get you off to lunch.
Let's do it.
Major call to action really quick, guys. IC is going to be open for another 3 days by the time you hear this podcast. Go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. Join us, get on the court, band with us, start taking control of your lives and help and serve other men while doing so. Second, just connect with Mr. Mickler on the Insta and the Twitter at Ryan Mickler. And we're excited.
Yeah,
New
man.
year.
Look,
There's a value of a new year.
100%.
It's an opportunity for us to level set and go, you know what? Step up.
A lot of times New Year's Eve and resolutions and New Year's Day and all this stuff gets a bad rap because it is just arbitrary. It really is just arbitrary.
Yeah.
Unless you give it some meaning, which is what we societally have decided to do. So it's no longer arbitrary, or it doesn't have to be. So what I would say as we wrap it up is I don't care where you're at in life. I don't care if you're at the pinnacle of your human achievement or if you're at the bottom of the totem pole and your life is falling apart, your finances are a wreck, and your health is a disaster, and your wife is leaving. I don't care where you are. What I know is that I think this is releases on January 3rd. What I know with 100% certainty is that life can get better. Life can get better for you. If you decide to put a stake in the ground right now and decide that January 3rd is the day that I decided my life is going to get better, and it does not matter what has happened to you in the past. And guess what? You're still going to have to visit some of that stuff, because you don't just get to put it away or wash it away just because you're deciding to be a new person. But life will get better if you decide that today is the day that you're putting the stake in the ground, and this is the bottom. Like, when do you reach the bottom? When you stop digging. So now it's time to climb, if you decide that you want to climb. And hopefully you'll do it with us.
Yeah. And we'll climb with you if
That's
you want
right.
to join us.
All right, guys. Orderman.com/Iron Council. We'll be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.